Hey, what's up, psychos? Welcome to another episode of Take Your Pills, Psychopath, the comedy podcast that exploits mental illness for personal profit. What? Trademark. I'm your host, John F. O'Donnell, J-Fod. How is everybody doing out there? How is everybody feeling? If you're in a hot place, how are you doing dealing with this crazy-ass heat wave? I'm in New York City dealing with it, doing all right. Sticking to my mental health routines, my little routines, doing pretty good. How is everybody out there? Did my stand-up shows this week. That was cool. Trying to get that hour of stand-up together. It's coming along. Hopefully at some point I'll be on tour so we can hang out IRL in real life, baby. Come out to a show. I will always let you guys know about tour dates when and if they happen. It's hard to get out there on the road, to be honest. It's tough. It's expensive. It's hard to end up in the black and not in the red. But I love doing it so damn much. Wish I could do it more. At some point I will. I'm confident that I will. What else is going on with me? Let's see. Not a ton. Just living that New York City life. I'm in that grind. Trying to, get by, doing my thing. I'm enjoying doing the podcast. I hope you guys are liking it. I hope you like the interviews. I hope you like the solo episodes. Yeah, we got a lot of interesting content coming out on the Patreon. The newest Patreon episode is about to be a list and explanation of different mental disorders from the DSM-5. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So that's an interesting list to go through. It's not an A to Z. It's not everything, but it is quite substantial. And it's kind of a good overview and way to learn that. And that is for the patrons. So get behind that paywall, friends. It is patreon.com/JFOD, patreon.com/JFOD. And oh my goodness gracious, does it help me out if you sign up for it. So if you can swing it, please do. Also, make sure you're on my newsletter. Right now, you find out about what's going to be going on in upcoming podcasts and other information with me. Sometimes I write stories and stuff like that. Just sign up for the free version of that at jfodnews.com. And the last thing, the last bit of housekeeping, the last plug is, if you haven't seen it yet, check out my stand-up comedy special on YouTube. All you have to do is type my name into the search, John F. O'Donnell, and then the special, The Manic Depressive Chocolate Fountain Operator, will show right up. And I ask, even if you have seen it, just leave a comment. It helps the algorithm show it to more people, so leave a positive comment. I love to see those. I'm proud of that work. And, it's still under the radar, so let's get some more eyeballs on that. This episode is going to be another solo episode. My plan is to certainly interview somebody for next week's episode, but this week, the way it worked out, it's just going to be myself. I have scoured the interwebs for psychology and psychiatry articles and pieces. I probably looked at about 30 plus sites. And then kept paring it down to what I thought would be a good episode. There's definitely pieces that I want to read in future episodes that we'll figure out. But today is going to be really interesting. I think the topics that I found are going to be worthwhile to read, and I hope that you guys enjoy them as much as I enjoy reading them to you. So let's give you an overview of what we're going to do today. We've got an article entitled, If Serotonin Doesn't Cause Depression, What Does? This is wild, guys. I mean, serotonin deficiency was thought to cause depression for decades and decades, and now there's new science saying otherwise. Crazy. We're going to learn about that. Let's see. We got 10 symptoms that may indicate a personality disorder. Interesting. Next piece, why social media makes people unhappy and simple ways to fix it. Okay, I feel like we all have an intuition that social media makes us unhappy, but this is a more deep dive explanation of that and ways to fix it, so I think it's very worthwhile. Then there's a related piece entitled Addictive-like use of social media associated with sexual distress and poorer sexual functioning. all signs of interacting with social media seem to be quite negative. I know there's some positives. But there's a lot of negative shit going on. So I'm going to read that. Then we got, interesting. This one's interesting. People with no mind's eye have less vivid and detailed memories. No mind's eye. I found this piece to be fascinating. I found the title to be fascinating. It has to do with memory. So we'll get into that. And then we will also read a piece called Most of Us Don't Have a Desire for Unlimited Wealth. And I'll kind of talk about the psychology behind wanting to acquire unlimited wealth compared to not, and what that is about. So I thought that would be interesting. And then, that's what we got on deck. If there's more time, I got some other things I can read as well. So we'll see how we do. But let's get into it. This first piece is from Psychology Today. Psychology Today continues to knock it out of the park with their pieces. So generally speaking, I have something from that when I do these. This one is entitled, If Serotonin Doesn't Cause Depression, What Does? The New Science of Depression Biology and What It May Mean. And this is by Austin Perlmutter, MD. Let's get right into it. The key points. Serotonin may not explain depression, but research on other brain pathways may provide answers. This is wild. It's like everything we think we know about the brain, then we don't know anymore. It changes. It's like, we're treating depression based on this thought that it is because of serotonin deficiency. All right, this is going to be interesting. The next key point, the wiring and rewiring of our brains, the neuroplasticity, is influenced by our lifestyle and may affect depression. All right, that seems reasonable. Our inflammatory state is affected by things like diet quality and sleep quantity and has been linked to depression. Totally. The gut-brain connection and our hormonal state are influenced by lifestyle choices and are connected to brain health and depression. Yeah, we're going to keep hearing more about this gut-brain connection moving forward, I believe. Okay, for the last half century, the dominant explanation for depression has centered on serotonin. The basic idea, low levels of brain serotonin or serotonin activity leads to symptoms of depression. This theory, which is known as the Serotonin Hypothesis, is based on several data points, including animal research and the effects of antidepressants that are supposed to work by increasing brain serotonin levels. But in the last several decades, a number of researchers have challenged the idea that serotonin plays a principal or even major role in depression. This is fucking mind-blowing, man. In recent days, the serotonin hypothesis of depression has been explicitly challenged by a number of scientific publications. Most notable, at the time of this writing, a paper published in Nature Molecular Psychology reviewed several lines of evidence on the subject of the serotonin-depression connection and concluded that, quote, the main areas of serotonin research provide no consistent evidence of there being an association between serotonin and depression, and no support for the hypothesis that depression is caused by lower serotonin activity or concentrations, end quote. Data points like this recent study point to a major question. If serotonin isn't driving depression, what does explain the brain state of the hundreds of millions of people living with it? While there are many potential explanations, here are four major systems that may prove more important to the brains of people with depression, and some ways we may be able to target them. Number one, brain rewiring, neuroplasticity. One of the most empowering results of neuroscience research is the idea that our brains are constantly being rewired. Specifically, our neurons are actively changing the number and strength of their connections to other neurons and to non-neuron brain cells called glia. This is a process called neuroplasticity, and it's increasingly thought to play a role in mood disorders like depression. Supporting factors for the neuroplasticity-depression connection include imaging findings, cell study research, and measurements connected to the rewiring process. The basic idea is that in depression, there may be issues with the quality, number, and type of connections our neurons make, and this may help explain depression symptoms. Importantly, research is showing that we may be able to positively affect neuroplasticity through lifestyle factors like exercise, learning new things, and potentially certain dietary modifications. Yeah. I really have found anytime I've been in a clinical depression, one of the things that gets me out of it, I know it sounds like a platitude, but it really is to start exercising, even if I really, really don't want to. There is also data showing that conventional antidepressants as well as psychedelics may positively influence neuroplasticity. The therapeutic use of psychedelics, you guys, is going to be a huge game changer moving forward. There's no doubt about that. And the suppression of it for decades and decades is, or more than that, 100 years, I don't know, is really criminal, I think. Even though I'm not going to mess with any of them because of my newborn baby-esque brain chemistry. 2, inflammation. The planet had a wake-up call to the significance of immune health in the context of the pandemic, but immune health is linked to far more than just risk for infectious disease. In the world of neuroscience and affective disorders, immune activation and especially inflammation is thought to be a risk factor for the development of conditions like depression. Higher levels of inflammation in our bloodstream have been shown this, and more broadly, has been linked to worse brain function. When excess or chronic inflammation is present in the brain, it appears to influence a number of pathways involved in depression. First, it may impair the healthy function of neurons by physically damaging them. Inflammation also may block healthy neuroplasticity while leading to the generation of toxic breakdown molecules like quinolinic acid that could further damage neuron health and contribute to depressive pathology. Within the brain, research shows that unique immune cells called microglia may be key to sustaining inflammation. So how is our inflammatory status regulated? It appears to be sensitive to the quality of our diet, sleep, exercise, stress-lowering interventions, and potentially even nature exposure. Yeah. All right. So that right there is inflammation connected to depression. Next, we got 3, the gut-brain connection. The gut is home to trillions of bacteria and the majority of our immune cells, making it a major hub for information transfer. A wide range of research now suggests that the gut and the brain are in constant communication, and it's been proposed that this data exchange may have an effect on everything from our cognitive state to our mood. Researchers have proposed that the state of our gut health, e.g. the leakiness of our gut lining, the immune cells in the gut, and the diversity of the microbes that live in our gut, plays a major role in our mental health and may significantly influence depression symptomatology. Yeah, the gut-brain connection, dudes. One of the most impressive aspects of our gut is the quantity and diversity of microbes that call it home. These bacteria make up the gut microbiome. Alterations in the bacteria that live in the gut microbiome have been linked to depression. It's thought that these bacteria may influence brain function through their effects on the vagus nerve, which runs from the gut to the brain. Their impact on the immune system, e.g. by affecting levels of inflammation, and through tiny molecules they create, e.g. short-chain fatty acids, which may reach the brain by way of the bloodstream. All right, that's the gut-brain. 4, the endocrine changes, the endocrine hormonal changes. When it comes to the regulation of brain function, a wide range of hormone pathways are thought to play important roles. This research extends to depression, and while certain hormonal changes can be hard to reverse, there's also much we can do to help improve aspects of our endocrine signaling pathways. Likely, the strongest endocrine depression connection, dysregulation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, the HPA axis, aka the stress system, is thought to significantly increase risk for depression. For example, people with an episode of major depression are 2.5 times more likely to have experienced a stressful event prior and a high stress event has been found to increase risk for depressive episode by 1.4 times. Issues with HPA system balance may contribute to depression by negatively impacting the hippocampus, increasing inflammation, damaging neuroplasticity, and even killing off neurons. A number of strategies have been shown to be successful in regulating HPA function, ranging from daily meditation to regular exercise to time in nature. Interesting stuff, man. Another important link between hormones and depression relates to estrogen. The hormone is thought to have a number of brain protective roles, including enhancing neuroplasticity. It has been proposed that declining levels of estrogen and related hormones during and after menopause may help explain the higher rates of depression seen by women in this period. While some research suggests that estrogen replacement therapies may present an interesting treatment strategy, there's still considerable debate around the safety of this practice. Insulin is a key metabolic hormone that facilitates the uptake of glucose by cells throughout the body. In the brain, insulin is thought to regulate blood sugar as well as influence memory and behavior. Insulin resistance is an increasingly common condition of metabolic dysfunction where our bodies have trouble sensing insulin and using glucose, and it's now been linked to a substantially higher risk of developing depression. A wide range of techniques can help improve insulin resistance in most people, especially those related to dietary modification and exercise. There you go. That's the piece. So it looks like a lot of other factors besides serotonin depletion can be connected with depression. What's good is it seems like there's a lot of proactive steps we can take to try to fight off depression. And this doesn't mean that the SSRIs that are given for people with depression don't work. Somehow they still do work for a lot of people. It's not saying that, but it's saying that serotonin does not necessarily play a principal role, if a major role whatsoever. That is wild. That is a wild reversal. And I think it's quite fascinating. So what do you guys think about that? Let me know. Let's talk about it. Email me at takeyourpillspod@gmail.com just to say what's up or whatever, man. Let's connect, psychos. So that's that piece. Let's keep moving. We got here 10 symptoms that may indicate a personality disorder. And this is from Psych Central. Psych Central, the central place for psych. We all have quirks and flaws, but how do you know when your personality traits are symptoms of a personality disorder? A personality disorder is a mental health condition that can make it difficult for folks to maintain healthy relationships or interact with others. Your personality makes you who you are. It influences how you perceive and interact with the world around you. Someone with a personality disorder may seem set in their ways and have trouble adapting to situations and life changes. You may not form friendships or close bonds as easily, as some personality traits may get in the way of forming interpersonal relationships. But everyone runs into issues with relationships at one time or another. A disagreement with a coworker, a tiff with a friend, an argument with your parents. So how can you tell if you or someone you know has a personality disorder? Here's 10 signs you might have a personality disorder. While there are 10 different personality disorders, many of them share similar symptoms. 1. Issues with self-esteem. Personality disorders can cause you to have very high or very low self-esteem. For some people, self-image can also fluctuate. For example, one minute you might think of yourself as a kind, loving person, and the next you may believe you're unpleasant and cruel. This unstable sense of self often arises in borderline personality disorder, BPD. People with certain personality disorders may have an overblown sense of self known as grandiosity and believe they're better and smarter than others. This is a common feature of narcissistic personality disorder. Okay. Issues with self-esteem. 2. Inconsistent values. Your values may seem inconsistent too. For example, you might behave appropriately at work but act differently at home. For example, someone may appear put together and polite in a work setting, but go home and act abusively toward their loved ones. This may be the case with antisocial personality disorder. Problem 3, problems maintaining close relationships. A personality disorder can make it tough to maintain relationships because strong personality traits may put off others. Your behavior may frustrate others and make them less likely to want to spend time around you. It can be hard to maintain relationships if you consistently run into misunderstandings with others. For people with personality disorders, this is common. You may project motivations and feelings onto others that don't exist. 4, difficulty with empathy. If you have a personality disorder, you may also have trouble empathizing with other people. You may come across as insensitive or uncaring. Some people may resort to lying regardless of how it affects others. They may lie to avoid accepting the blame for their behavior. 5, trouble with boundaries. People with personality disorders may also refuse or find it hard to establish and recognize boundaries with others. You may not care about maintaining or paying attention to boundaries. Depending on your personality disorder, you may not mean to overstep boundaries. Instead, you may find it hard to know when you're overstepping. Some people may even overstep knowingly, even when someone tells them not to, or when someone tells them no. So that's the first 5. There's 5 more, and we're going to go through them. But I'm wondering if anybody's listening is recognizing this, if some things are resonating. I don't know if we should self-diagnose. I wonder if this is resonating in people that we know. And it's interesting. It's certainly interesting. So let's keep going. 6, problematic parenting styles. Parents with personality disorders may have abusive or irresponsible parenting styles. Some people with personality disorders may be too involved in their children's lives, overly emotional, and too enmeshed in family relationships. Others may be extremely detached and uninvolved in their child's lives. In many cases, the children of people with personality disorders will be impacted by their parents' behaviors. 7, difficulty regulating emotions. If you have a personality disorder, you may have trouble keeping your emotions in check. You may get angry easily or be quick to react in frustration when something isn't going your way. For instance, someone with BPD, borderline personality disorder, may have intense mood swings or lash out to seek attention, and someone with histrionic personality disorder may experience rapidly changing, shallow emotions. And symptoms of BPD include feelings of emptiness and angry outbursts. 8, problems with stress. If you have a personality disorder, you may find it hard to cope with stressful situations and events. You may try to cope with stress in unhealthy ways. For example, someone with BPD may self-harm in reaction to managing life with BPD symptoms, such as feelings of abandonment and current causes of stress. 9, low self-awareness. Often people with personality disorders can't recognize or acknowledge they have a mental health condition. You may be in denial and refuse to seek treatment even when those around you urge you to get help. You may also blame other people for your behavior or problems. For example, if you're having relationship trouble, you may regularly fail to accept responsibility for the part you play and blame issues on your partner. For instance, people with obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, OCPD, may not realize their preoccupation with organization, schedules, and work projects is affecting their relationships and feel very resistant to change or compromise. 10, difficulty at work. Personality disorders can make relationships hard, and they can also make it tough to perform in a professional work setting. You may butt heads with bosses or coworkers and find it hard to work on a team. But angry outbursts aren't the only potential professional roadblock. Someone with schizoid personality disorder, for example, may have a hard time holding a job because they may be withdrawn or very shy. Yeah, schizoid personality disorder and schizophrenia are different things, you guys, just FYI. So those are the 10. Those are the 10 things. Now, there's more to this article, which is interesting, which is what are the types of personality disorders. It briefly goes into that, and we're going to read that in a second. But yeah, those are 10 things right there, man. 10 signs you might have a personality disorder. Issues with self-esteem, inconsistent values, problems maintaining close relationships, difficulty with empathy, trouble with boundaries, problematic parenting styles, difficulty regulating emotions, problems with stress, low self-awareness, difficulty at work. I certainly know some people that, they tick a number of these boxes. For sure. And let's get into the types. Okay. What are the types of personality disorders? Personality disorders can be divided into 3 clusters, A, B, and C. Cluster A personality disorders. If you have a cluster A personality disorder, you may appear odd to others. You likely have trouble with social interactions. And some examples are paranoid personality disorder, schizotypal personality disorder, and schizoid personality disorder. Then we got cluster B personality disorders. If you have a cluster B personality disorder, you probably have difficulty controlling your emotions and may act out unpredictably. That's borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, and antisocial personality disorder. Then you got cluster C personality disorders. If you have a cluster C personality disorder, you may be more anxious and fearful. You may spend an unhealthy amount of time doubting yourself and your abilities. And that's obsessive compulsive personality disorder, avoidant personality disorder, and dependent personality disorder. Okay, now the article says, let's recap. You may find yourself looking through the above list and noticing traits within yourself. We all act out of anger or become overly emotional from time to time, especially when faced with high amounts of stress. But to receive a diagnosis of a personality disorder, you must have an enduring pattern of inner experiences and behavior that differs markedly from cultural expectations and norms. The symptoms must span social and work situations, e.g., not just at work. 2 or more of the following areas will be impacted: cognitions, meaning thoughts, mood, interpersonal relationships, impulse control. These attributes will also likely interfere in your life and may even cause you to lose out on relationships or professional opportunities. Personality disorders are complex conditions, but treatment is available. There is treatment for this stuff. Personality disorders are not easily self-diagnosed, partly because those who have them don't see their problematic symptoms. Only a mental health professional can diagnose a personality disorder. If you think you or someone you know shows signs of personality disorder, consider reaching out to a mental health professional. Recognizing you may have a mental health condition is the first step to feeling better and cultivating healthier relationships. And remember, you're not alone. Having a personality disorder can feel isolating, but help is available. Yeah. Consider looking through the following resources for more information about personality disorders and available treatment options. There's the American Psychiatric Association, the American Psychological Association, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and the National Institute of Mental Health. Yeah, there are treatments for this stuff. I know for borderline personality disorder, there's DBT, dialectic behavioral therapy. It's supposed to be very helpful to help people regulate their emotions and be self-aware of when they're catastrophizing people or idealizing people, which is a symptom of BPD. Yeah. Interesting piece, guys. Interesting piece. Let's keep on moving. Okay, this one. Here we go. And it sucks, man, because as like a comedian now, so much you're judged by your presence in social media, how big your social media following is. And I just can't bring myself to grind into this social media thing because it makes me feel bad. And it's so transient. And also for me, the type of comedy that I do, it's like the bits are longer. So to compress them down into this bite-sized thing to make them work for Instagram and TikTok, it's like, but you got to do it. Ugh, do you though? This article is entitled, Why Social Media Makes People Unhappy and Simple Ways to Fix It. And this is from Scientific American. That is the outlet. Let's do it. Research suggests platform designs make us lose track of time spent on them and can heighten conflicts, and then we feel upset with ourselves. Yeah. Strong agree. Here we go. Disrupted sleep, lower life satisfaction, and poor self-esteem are just a few of the negative mental health consequences that research has linked to social media. Somehow, the same platforms that can help people feel more connected and knowledgeable also contribute to loneliness and disinformation. What succeeds and fails, computer scientists argue, is a function of how these platforms are designed. Amanda Bowen, a graduate student specializing in human-computer interaction, a subfield of computer science at the University of Washington, believes that interdisciplinary research could inform better social platforms and apps. At the 2022 Association for Computing Machinery Computer-Human Interactions Conference on Human Factors in Computing Systems in May, holy shit, long name, she presented findings from a recent project that explored how social media triggers what psychologists call dissociation, or a state of reduced self-reflection and narrowed attention. Bauman spoke with Mind Matters editor Daisy Uhas to explain how and why apps need to change to give the people who use them greater power. All right, here's the transcript of the interview. You've shown how changing social media cues and presentations could improve well-being, even when people strongly disagree on issues. Can you give an example? The design of social media can have a lot of power in how people interact with each other and how they feel about their online experiences. For example, we found that social media design can actually help people feel more supportive and kind in moments of online conflict, provided there's a little bit of a nudge to behave that way. In one study, we designed an intervention that encouraged people who start talking about something contentious in a comment thread to switch to direct messaging. People really liked it. It helped resolve their conflict and replicated a solution we use in person. People having a public argument moved to a private space to work things out. Interesting. Okay. Little tweak like that, where people, if they're not, in the quote unquote public square arguing, if it's more in a direct message, more private capacity, that can diffuse things. All right. These little changes to the platform. Next question. You've also tackled a different problem coming out of social media usage called the 30-minute ick factor, a term coined by Alexis Hineker, your graduate advisor and a computer scientist at the University of Washington. What is that? We very quickly lose ourselves on social media. When people encounter a platform where they can infinitely scroll for more information, it can trigger a similar neurocognitive reward system as anticipating a winning lottery ticket or getting food. It's a powerful way that these apps are designed to keep us checking and scrolling. The 30-minute ick factor is when people mean to check their social media briefly, but then find that 30 minutes have passed, and when they realize how much time they spent, they have this sense of disgust and disappointment in themselves. Research has shown that people are dissatisfied with this habitual social media use. A lot of people frame it as meaningless, unproductive, or addictive. Yeah. Next one. You've argued this experience is less a matter of addiction and more an issue of dissociation. What is that exactly? Dissociation is a psychological process that comes in many forms. In the most common, everyday dissociation, your mind is so absorbed that you are disconnected from your actions. You could be doing the dishes, start daydreaming, and not pay attention to how you are doing the dishes. Or you might seek immersive experiences, watching a movie, reading a book, or playing a game that pass the time and cause you to forget where you are. During these activities, your sense of reflective self-consciousness and the passage of time is reduced. People only realize that they dissociated in hindsight. Attention is restored with the sense of what just happened, or my leg fell asleep while we were watching that movie. It's not disassociation, it's dissociation can be a positive thing, especially if it's an absorbing experience, meaningful activity, or a needed break. But it can also be harmful in certain cases, as in gambling, or come in conflict with people's time management goals, as with social media scrolling. All right. This is actually turning out to be interesting. I think. How do you measure people's dissociation on social media? We worked with 43 participants who used a custom mobile app that we created called Chirp to access their Twitter accounts. The app let people interact with Twitter content while also allowing us to ask them questions and test interventions. So when people were using Chirp, after a given number of minutes, we would send them a questionnaire based on a psychological scale for measuring dissociation. We asked how much they agreed with the statement, quote, "I am currently using Chirp without really paying attention to what I'm doing," on a scale of 1 to 5. We also did interviews with 11 people to learn more. The results showed dissociation occurred in 42% of our participants, and they regularly reported losing track of time or feeling, quote, all consumed. Interesting. You also designed 4 interventions that modified people's Twitter experience on Chirp to reduce dissociation. What worked? The most successful were custom lists and reading history labels. In custom lists, we forced users to categorize the content they followed, such as sports or news or friends. Then instead of interacting with Twitter's main feed, they engaged only with content on these lists. This approach was coupled with a reading history intervention in which people received a message when they were caught up on the newest tweets. Rather than continuing to scroll, they were alerted to what they had already seen, and so they focused on just the newest content. Those interventions reduced dissociation, and when we did interviews, people said they felt safer checking their social media accounts when these modifications were present. In another design, people received timed messages letting them know how long they had been on Chirp and suggesting they leave. They also had the option of viewing a usage page that showed them statistics such as how much time they'd spent on Chirp in the past 7 days. These 2 solutions were effective if people opted to use them. Many people ignored them, however. Also, people thought the timed messages were annoying. Those findings are interesting because a lot of the popular time management tools available to people look like these timeout and usage notifications. Interesting stuff. So what could social media companies be doing differently, and is there any incentive for them to change? Answer. Right now, there is a lot working against people who use social media. It's impossible to ever fully catch up on a social media feed, especially when you consider the algorithmically inserted content such as Twitter's trending tweets or TikTok's For You page. But I think that there is hope that relatively simple tweaks to social media design, such as custom lists, can make a difference. It's important to note that the custom lists significantly reduced dissociation for people, but they did not significantly affect time spent using the app. To me, that points out that reducing people's dissociation may not be as antithetical to social media companies' revenue goals as we might intuitively think. We found that people value being able to log into a platform, connect with who they want to connect with, consume the media they enjoy, find the information that's relevant, and then be gently nudged off the platform in a way that fits their time management goals. Social media could have a healthy, meaningful place in people's lives, but that's just not the way it's being designed right now. Yeah, it's being designed for us to be sucked in to a time suck hellscape of, anguish, anxiety, lack of self-confidence, and conflict. This is an interesting article. Next question. What's most important for people using social media now to know? First, don't pile a bunch of shame onto your social media habits. Thousands of people are employed to make you swipe your thumb up on that screen and keep you doing what you're doing. Let's shift the responsibility of designing safe and fulfilling experiences from users to the companies. Good point. Very good point. Second, get familiar with the well-being tools that are already offered. TikTok has a feature that every hour will tell you that you've been scrolling for a while and should consider a break. On Twitter, custom lists are a feature that already exists. It's just not the default option. If more people started using these tools, it could convince these companies to refine them. Most importantly, vote for people who are interested in regulating technology, because I think that's where we're going to see the biggest changes made. Interesting. Great piece. Great piece. Yeah, social media is messed up, man. But these are some good ideas to tweak your usage, to try to be a little bit less dissociated from it, so you don't just get sucked away into the social media scrolling abyss. I'm so bad at getting amplified on social media, man. Well, let's read another article about why social media is messed up. This is a related piece. This is from SciPost, where they post Psy, P-S-Y. Addictive-like use of social media associated with sexual distress and poorer sexual functioning. Hooray! And this is by Erica W. Dolan. I forgot to say that last piece was by Daisy Uhas. This piece is by Eric W. Dolan. Here we go. The addictive-like use of social networking sites like Facebook might be a risk factor for impaired sexual functioning, according to new research published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine. The study provides evidence that frequent and compulsive use of social media is linked to a number of sexual problems among both women and men. Quote, there is a growing awareness that the use of social media can acquire the characteristics of an addiction. When this happens, social media may worsen mood, said study author Rui Miguel Costa of the William James Center for Research at ISPA, the Instituto Universitario in Portugal. Quote, given that negative mood is associated with sexual difficulties, I was surprised with the lack of studies examining if social media addiction is related to sexual difficulties. To the best of my knowledge, one single study by Al-Maradi and colleagues had suggested that more addictive use of social media may have adverse effects on female sexual function. Thus, I decided to study if social media addiction is related to sexual difficulties in women and men. For their study, the researchers analyzed data from 946 women and 235 men who completed assessments of sexual function and problematic use of smartphones, and 536 women and 194 men who completed assessments of sexual function and problematic use of social networking sites. The participants had all been sexually active with opposite sex partners within the past month. To measure problematic use of social networking sites, the participants responded to a series of questions such as, quote, do you neglect household chores to spend more time on social networking sites? End quote. Quote, do others in your life complain to you about the amount of time you spend online? End quote. And, quote, does your job performance or productivity suffer because of staying on social networking sites? End quote. The researchers found that problematic use of social networking sites was associated with sexual distress and poorer sexual functioning. Among women, problematic use of social networking sites was associated with lower sexual arousal, difficulties lubricating, difficulties having orgasms, sexual dissatisfaction, coital pain, and greater sexual distress. Among men, on the other hand, problematic use of social networking sites was associated with lower erectile function, lower desire, intercourse dissatisfaction, overall sexual dissatisfaction, and more difficulties having orgasms. Problematic smartphone use was also associated with sexual distress and poorer sexual functioning. However, these relationships mostly disappeared after the researchers controlled for problematic use of social networking sites. Thus, it seems to be the addictive-like use of social networking sites that is mostly associated with diminished sexual function, not the addictive-like use of smartphones per se, the researcher says. Quote, it is beneficial to reduce the use of social media if it often interferes with daily activities, work, sleep, personal relationships, or face-to-face social interactions more generally. Costa told SciPost, quote, "It is also beneficial to reduce the use of social media or at least change the pattern of use. If social media often elicit negative emotions like anger, envy, disappointment, loneliness, or a sense of estrangement. These are possible processes by which social media worsen mood and sexual function. We need more research about these issues." End quote. But it is also possible that sexual dysfunction increases vulnerability to problematic use of social networking sites. Interesting. Quote, "The study is correlation. Therefore, we need to be cautious regarding the causal inferences," Costa explained. "Some experimental studies show that for more problematic users of social media, reducing its use is beneficial for mood. Now, more experimental studies are needed to test if sexual function is improved by spending less time on social media or by avoiding negative emotions that social media can trigger. We also need more knowledge about the processes that explain why social media addiction is associated with sexual difficulties. Previous research has found that problematic use of social networking sites is linked to reduced intimacy and lower levels of perceived social support, which in turn is associated with greater sexual distress. Quote, "Ironically, using social media very frequently may make one feel more isolated from others, sometimes from the partner," Costa said. "If one feels emotionally distanced from the partner, sexual function is more likely to be impaired." Interesting. The study, "Sexual Function and Problematic Use of Smartphones and Social Networking Sites," was authored by Vanessa Forezzo, Katerina Martins, Katya Goncalves, Anya Rolos Santos, and Rui Miguel Costa. All right, interesting. More bad stuff potentially about social media addiction affecting sexual functioning. Great. Good. Grand. Terrific. Wonderful. All right. Cool. We got a couple more pieces to get through. Are you guys enjoying this episode so far? Let me know. Let me know what you think of the solo episodes. Shoot me an email at takeyourpillspod@gmail.com. Why not? Cool. All right. Next piece. This is interesting. I thought the title was super interesting. "People with no mind's eye have less vivid and detailed memories. New research highlights the key role of mental imagery in memory." And this is from the British Psychological Society. Interesting publication. And this is by Matthew Warren. Here we go. "When we're asked to imagine a scene or object, most of us are able to conjure up an image in our mind's eye. But about 2 to 5% of the population can't do this. They have a condition called aphantasia and are unable to produce mental imagery at all. Aphantasia is spelled APHANTASIA. Now, a study published in Cognition has found that aphantasia can affect memory abilities too. The researchers report that aphantasics have less detailed and rich memories for events in their lives, a finding that not only reveals more about the condition, but also highlights the key role of mental imagery in memory generally. Past work had shown that people with aphantasia report almost no mental imagery when recalling past events from their lives or when thinking about potential future events. But these findings were based on participants rating their own abilities. Notes Alexei Dawes and colleagues from the University of New South Wales. So the team decided to examine whether aphantasic participants also show memory deficits in more objective measures. The researchers recruited 30 participants with aphantasia and 30 control participants who didn't have any problem with mental imagery. All participants filled in questionnaires asking them to report the vividness of various kinds of mental imagery, including when recalling scenes from their lives. The researchers found that, as in past studies, that aphantasic participants reported having less vivid mental imagery, although again consistent with past work, their spatial imagery was just as good as that of control participants. To get a more quote, objective measure of memory deficits, the team then looked at the kind of information people provided when describing their memories. Participants were asked to remember 6 events in their lives, as well as think about 6 hypothetical future events and write a description of each. For their analysis, the researchers looked at different categories of details contained in these descriptions, for instance, details related to participants' sensations, thoughts, or emotions. After writing each description, participants also reported their own subjective experiences of that particular event, such as how vivid it was and how much emotion they felt. The team found that aphantasic participants gave fewer details than control participants about both kinds of event. This effect seemed to be driven specifically by the fact that they wrote down fewer visual details. The groups didn't differ in the amount of detail they gave that involved other senses like smelling or hearing, or that concerned other aspects of the event like thoughts or emotions they experienced. The two groups also differed in how they reported experiencing the memories and imagining the future events. And imagining the future events. Compared to controls, aphantasics indicated that the events were less vivid and contained fewer sensory or spatial details, for instance, and they also reported experiencing less emotion when thinking about the event. Overall, the results show that people with aphantasia have less vivid and detailed memories, particularly when it comes to visual details. And this effect is clear whether they are asked about their experience or tested in more objective ways. The authors write that their findings represent the, quote, first robust behavioral evidence that visual imagery absence is associated with a significantly reduced capacity to simulate the past and construct the future, end quote. The very fact that aphantasics show their deficits also implies their mental imagery is generally an important part of recalling events or imagining future ones. This probably isn't a huge surprise, but as the authors point out, is something that has been hard to test empirically until now. However, the study also shows that mental imagery isn't everything. People with aphantasia were still able to retrieve memories, after all. Instead, it seems that mental imagery is specifically involved in the aspect of memory that involves, quote, reliving events in our minds. All right. Interesting. I mean, it makes sense that people that can't picture things in their mind's eye would be unable to produce this mental imagery and would have issues with that. But it's interesting that they finally found through behavioral evidence to find this more objectively. That's the first time that's been done. Interesting piece in the British Psychology Society, from the British Psychology Society. Cool. I got one more piece, also from the British Psychological Society. And that last piece was by Matthew Warren. Cool. All right, the British Psychological Society, this piece is entitled, Most of Us Don't Have a Desire for Unlimited Wealth. Having limited wants, the study suggests, is normal. Understanding this more thoroughly could help us consume less. Fascinating. This is by Emily Reynolds. Here we go. Do humans always want more, or are we sometimes just happy with our lot? This debate has long raged in multiple disciplines: economics, politics, and even philosophy. And whether an unlimited desire for more is inherent or a product of capitalism is equally hotly contested. Paul G. Bain from the University of Bath and Renata Bongiorno from Bath Spa University explore this question in a new paper published in Nature Sustainability. They find that the assumption we always want more, no matter how much we have, may not be completely accurate. While some of us do have unlimited desire for wealth, they are not the majority. Yeah, they probably have like psychopathy or sociopathy or something. I don't know. I'm just speculating here. The first study included around 2,000 participants from both advanced and economically developing countries, including the US, UK, France, South Africa, China, Russia, and Brazil. As part of a larger study, participants were asked to imagine their absolutely ideal life and to consider how much money they would want in this ideal life. They were then asked whether they wanted to enter one of 8 hypothetical lotteries, each with a prize ranging from $10,000 to $100 billion. After this, participants indicated the most important change they would make with the money. The second study recruited nearly 6,000 participants from a wider number of countries, including from the Middle East, Africa, Central America, North America, South America, Asia, Europe, and Oceania. Participants in this study completed the same measures as in the first. The results were similar in both studies. Relatively few participants chose the smallest values, but there was a peak between $1 million and $10 million, with a large number of participants choosing these lotteries. Interest in the larger figures then declined, with only a small number of people choosing $1 billion, but a significant number of people choosing the largest, essentially unlimited figure of $100 billion. In the first study, for instance, 32% of Americans picked this amount, though only 8% of those from China chose this, interestingly. In the second study, Indonesia had the highest proportion of participants selecting unlimited amounts at 39%, and Russia the lowest at 11%. However, it's worth noting that although a substantial number of people did pick this unlimited amount of money across the studies, they were always a minority. In terms of the nationality of participants, the proportion of those selecting unlimited amounts was similar across more and less developed countries, despite the fact, quote, luxury and consumption is encouraged in more developed countries, as the authors point out. Where there was a difference, however, was between countries where the group is prioritized over the self. Participants from these countries were more likely to select the unlimited lottery than those from individualistic nations. Okay. Younger people and those who live in cities were also more likely to select the unlimited lottery, though there was no variation by gender, class, education, or political ideology. When asked what they would use the money for, those who selected the unlimited lottery were more likely to say they wanted to use their money to address social problems, perhaps why this choice was more prevalent in collectivist societies. However, the majority of these participants still stated they would use the money for themselves. When asked about their values, participants who chose the unlimited figure were also no more likely to care about the welfare of others, but did place more importance on their own personal interests. The study suggests that the idea we all want unlimited resources is probably not accurate. Further research could help us pinpoint exactly what drives our desire for certain amounts of money, limited or unlimited. For instance, it would be interesting to know whether people's views on extreme wealth and inequality influence their decisions. Overall, the study's results could help us move towards a more sustainable and less unequal way of thinking about resources and wealth. As the team writes, quote, normative beliefs guide behavior even as they are inaccurate, end quote. In other words, we sometimes fail to act on our own values because we think we are in the minority. Having limited wants, the study suggests, is normal. Understanding this more thoroughly could help us consume less, even as materialistic societies encourage us to consume more. Interesting stuff. I mean, personally, I don't long for unlimited wealth. I would just like to be comfortable. It would be great not to be stressed about money constantly. I'd love to have enough money that I could pursue my creative endeavors as I like, you know? Ironically, though, the struggle keeps you sharp in a way. The struggle can keep you relevant, so to speak. But, yeah, it sucks being stressed over money, let's be honest. It does. But this is a super interesting piece, super interesting study, and super interesting episode, man. We're coming up on about an hour. We covered some good stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I hope you guys learned something in it. It's been another solo episode of Take Your Pill Psychopath. And I appreciate you guys listening so much. Of course, I'm going to plug the Patreon again. If you're enjoying this work, you see some value in it, and you want to get extra content, extra episode every week, a monthly Ask Me Anything session, even a certain tier, you get a personalized video chat with me. Talk about whatevs. That's at patreon.com/JFOD. Awesome way to support me and the show. Means a lot. Got my newsletter, j5news.com. And, if you don't have any spare cash or anything like that, just check out my stand-up special. It's free on YouTube. Leave a comment. Leave a positive comment. Get some more eyeballs on that. Let's get it up to 10K views. We're at like 9.4K. Let's get it up to 10K. Why not? Yeah. That's just John F. O'Donnell into YouTube. This has been another episode of Take Your Pill Psychopath, the comedy podcast that exploits mental illness for personal profit. What? Trademark. I've been your host, John F. O'Donnell. Thank you so much for listening. Please spread the word. Enjoy your day, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. And let's connect again soon. Love you guys. Bye-bye.